goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. So we do that every Tuesday by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. This week we have the boss over at FCB. Tyler Turnbull is the global CEO of FCB. He stands as one of the agency's most trusted transformation agents. His colleagues hail his digital expertise and capacity for planning. Still, he especially shines when it comes to his unique combination of strategic genius and sheer knowledge. He is the kind of thinker who spontaneously fills a giant whiteboard with an instant multi-channel marketing strategy that a client will then go on to buy without revision. And apparently, this actually happened once. So Tyler talks with us about FCB. He tells us about FCB at the international level and explains his vision for growth for the entire company. But then we also get granular. We discuss how somebody can break into a local FCB shop, let's say in Chicago or New York. So he teaches us how we can all thrive in this business long term. And he tells us how he rose the ranks. We go over some of those common themes and how we can apply it. We, the aspiring advertisers, or those early in our careers, how we can apply those knowledge pieces today. Tyler even gets into some skiing recommendations in Canada because he's based over in Toronto. Also, hey, real quick, if you're following us on LinkedIn and Instagram and you shoot me a message, I will be happy to help you network with any of our guests. So to do that, follow us on Instagram. That's at Breaking and Entering Pod, all one word, at Breaking and Entering Pod. And then just type in Breaking and Entering on LinkedIn and reach out. But enough for me. Let's listen to the Marketing Magazine's Top 30 Under 30, Tyler Turnbull. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Tyler Turnbull, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Gino. Thank you for having me.
Are you ready to talk a little bit about advertising?
I am. I always am. This is an industry that I love. So I'm very, very passionate about it, and I'm excited to connect with you today.
Well, you must love it because it seems like you're pretty good at it because your title is Global CEO of FCB, which is a pretty big deal, or at least I think it is. So I want to know what that means. Talk about FCB, talk about how you got here, talk about where you're at. So many things to talk about. Where do you want to start, Tyler?
Listen, I mean, I can start at the beginning if that helps, and then you can push me and guide me as we go, depending on how far back you want.
I want to know, before we even get to the beginning, let's start off right from here. What does it mean to be the global CEO of FCB?
Listen, I mean, it's an honor. I think this year FCB turns 150 years old, and there aren't many. Thank you. There aren't many global agencies that have reached 150 years. And when I think about some of the founding principles of FCB 150 years ago, they're as true as they were then as they are now. You know, our founder, one of our founders, Albert Lasker, is credited for doing some of the most famous and effective work in the world. He invented the brand Sunkissed oranges. Post that branding, he invented the orange juicer. So when Sunkissed came to him and said, hey, we need people to eat more oranges, he said, you know what, I've realized that if you ask people to drink oranges instead of eat them, it takes 3 oranges to make a glass of juice versus just 1. So why don't you create this thing that we'll call the orange juicer? And the rest is history, you know, become a moment. And so I think the legacy of our company has always been in unleashing creativity everywhere and really encouraging brands to see the economic power of what we do. And so to be able to lead the company in partnership with our global chair and our global CCO, Susan Creedle, is just a very special thing for me. We have thousands of people around the world who are amazing. I've been part of FCB now for over 8 years, so I've had the chance to meet many of them across Canada and the US and all of the main regions that we operate in. And I think it's just a very special time for us as a network. We're doing some amazing work. And I think we're just getting started, even though we're 150 years old. So it's humbling
Nice.
and very special.
Nice. Tell me about the network, high level. How many offices do you guys have? What are some of the capabilities, creds? Give us a rundown for people that might never heard of FCB if they're students in the industry.
Sure. So we've got just over 100 offices around the world, around 8,000 people within FCB. We're part of IPG or Interpublic from a network perspective. We have some amazing offices all around the world, and in no particular order. I know you're in Chicago right now, so we should start in Chicago. Chicago's our largest office in our network.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's the heartbeat of our company and core to what we do. Our leadership team there, Kelly Graves, Andreas Ordonez, our CSO Molly, and many, many others have been driving that agency for many years, working on some phenomenal brands like Kimberly-Clark, Clorox, and many, many others, Cox, doing some phenomenal work over the years. They're one of the most awarded agencies in North America.
Yep.
And are awesome. We've got another great agency in New York as another example. So we do some amazing work with brands like ABI or the Food and Drug Administration, helping to prevent youth smoking has been a big file of ours for a long time. And then up in Toronto, again, my home office where I started, we do a lot of great work with brands like BMO, the Home Depot, many, many others. And then around the world, when you start to look around, very, very big group in India. Our India office was just named International Agency of the Year by Adweek.
Oh, nice.
Here. So they're just doing phenomenal work there. And we have for years. I was in Mumbai a few months ago, and it's just a very special place and market for us. We've got a great agency in the UK that won a Titanium Lion this past year and did amazing. Brazil.
Titanium Lion.
Yes.
Titanium Lion.
We've won 4 Titanium Lion in the past 3 years. And I think that's a really special recognition for us as a company, because that category is really about leading the industry and pushing into different spaces creatively that haven't typically been seen. And that's exactly the type of work that I think we're trying to do as a company. So around the world, big presence, many different offices, but all unified in our belief that creativity is an economic multiplier, and unified in the power of what we do and the economic value that we create as an industry.
That's helpful. We appreciate that background. I don't know how you do it all. I do want to ask you, though, now that we are in the early stages of 2023, like what's the game plan? What's the vision? Where do you guys want to grow globally as a network? What are some of those big goals this year that you're working on?
Yeah, listen, we all read the headlines, right? In terms of the changes that we're seeing in the economy, in terms of inflation, obviously the war. I think as a marketer running a brand right now, it's a very challenging time if you look at the glass, one way. But I think when you look historically over any of these difficult times from a recessionary period, the data shows that now is the best time to build market share as a brand than ever before. And if you invest in what we would say timely and timeless creativity, you will see outsized market share growth, not only in this year, but compounded over time based on those investments. So what we're really focused on with our clients, helping them to see the playbook that will help them grow this year as brands, helping them to determine how to invest and where. And I think most importantly, helping to show them that if they do what we call 4, 5, 6 ideas. So ideas that are provocative, behavior changing, and breakthrough, and never finish platforms, as we would say, they have a chance to grow like never before. And so I think that's really a focus of ours worldwide, to make sure that we're delivering on that. And I think, my background is very much in the digital data technology space. And when I think about how ideas can be powered with data and tech right now, I'm sure you've been experimenting with Chat GPT and some of those other technologies. I think the potential and the canvas for creativity has never been bigger. And so we're really focused as a company on how can we activate that in more places? How can we unleash it across an entire customer experience? And how can we drive growth for the brands that we work with?
Well, if I'm a student or a recent grad or somebody that wants to break into advertising, why should I consider applying to an FCB in the United States or wherever you guys might have offices at?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I'd answer that from an industry perspective, right? In terms of why advertising, right? If you're someone that's thinking about, where to start your career or where to go, I think you might be considering advertising, you might be considering media, you might be considering tech, you might be considering lots of different industries. And I think what makes the advertising industry really special is everyone has a chance to, I think, see every day what you do, what you contribute. We're all consumers first. We all see advertising out there. I think we all see advertising that we don't like out there in many different places.
Right.
And I think when you see something that's special and you create something that's great, it's pretty powerful and it's pretty rewarding. And I think the transformation that brands are going through right now and our business, it's just an exciting time to be part of this world and to really, I think, help shape it. I think the thing about advertising that I find is, if you're passionate, if you have a perspective on creative and work and strategy that you can form and share, you can excel and grow like never before. You're not time bound like some other industries and categories where you have to put in 20 plus years before you can do X, Y, and Z. I think our industry really rewards creativity and success. And that was something that really drew me into this industry when, I was thinking about graduating. I had no clue what I wanted to do, and advertising certainly wasn't on my list. So I was thankful that I found it, and that I'm here now.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about how you broke in, but I do want to know, for somebody that here, for our listeners, they probably know that they want to go into advertising. We speak really about advertising agencies. We do talk with some marketers on the brand side as well, which are very interesting options, but I've always been biased myself to agency life. And the listeners know that by now. So what makes FCB a great place for entry-level workers, would you say?
Listen, I think one of the things that makes FCB great is we have a very clear vision of who we are as a company. We believe we're a products company and our product is great work. And I think how we develop that product as a team is through a specific set of values that are really based around generosity and supporting each other. So if you're just breaking into this business, if you're looking for that first experience at an agency, you might not know the terminologies that, agency people use or how we talk about process or what a deck is or, any of those fundamental elements. I think there are a couple key factors you need to consider as you go into that life. I think one is who's going to support you in that first year, second year to really help you to understand what agency life is like and how to thrive and grow in an environment. And I think across FCB, all of our leadership teams are very invested in young talent and in helping each of our people understand where they want to go and how we can help them get there. I think secondly, you want to work on brands and businesses that challenge you, that you're interested in personally, that you understand that you can go deep on, and really make interesting work on. And I think third, early in your career, I think you want a diverse set of experiences. So some of that could mean working on different types of businesses, but the other aspect of that is working in different parts of the agency. And I think from an FCB perspective, what's interesting about us is, a big part of our business is advertising, is doing amazing platform creation for brands to help them grow in many, many different places. But we also have huge components of our business in production. We have one of the biggest production entities in the world, in what we call 456 studios. So if you want to learn how to shoot or edit or do post work or any of those motion design, we have amazing teams there. And then with FCB6, which is a specialist brand of ours, we do a lot of work in CRM one-to-one and performance-based work. So I think the advantage with FCB is I think you want to come out of your first couple of years from an agency perspective really well-rounded. You want to have a maximum number of experiences. And fundamentally, you want to make some awesome work. And I think we can offer all three of those.
Sold. Works
when
for
do
me.
You start? Let's go.
That's awesome. No, I think it's super great. I think getting those experiences, diversity and experiences as well is super important. And then, after, when you're looking at yourself 5, 7, 10 years down later, you can make other decisions. But
For
I
sure.
always say, start off with a large agency and then you can go specialize somewhere else after some time, reevaluate. But that's always been my perspective. I want to know your perspective and how you started out. Where did you grow up? And then when did you decide, hey, I want to do this thing called advertising for a living? I want to make commercials for a living.
Awesome. Well, I grew up in a place called Calgary, Alberta, home of the 1988 Olympics. Great place to grow up. But I went to school when I graduated in a place called Queens in Kingston, Ontario. And both of my parents were lawyers. My mom was a family lawyer. My dad was an M&A lawyer. And they said, do whatever you want in kind of your first degree. And then probably you should become a lawyer. Like it was just a natural
sounds good.
thing in my family. And so I went
Did you play hockey?
I did not play hockey. I skied every weekend. So I was given a
Okay.
choice as a 4-year-old. You can either play hockey or you can ski. And I chose
Cool.
skiing, thankfully, because I don't think I
Do you
would have been
still
a good
ski?
hockey. Yes. Yeah. All the time. All the time. I have 2 young kids now, 6 and 8, and I've indoctrinated them the same way that I was. So they ski every weekend of the winter when we can.
Where's a good spot to go around you?
Listen, as a Western Canadian, I'm kind of a Western ski snob. Eastern Ontario is not the best place to ski in the world, but there's a place called Collingwood, which is about 2 hours north of Toronto, which has a lot of kind of mid-sized mountains that are amazing for kids. So we ski up
What's
there.
it called?
It's called Collingwood.
Collingwood. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place you ever skied at?
Oh my gosh. You know what? My favorite place I've ever skied at is Kicking Horse in British Columbia.
Okay.
It's just amazing. It's super big. The snow is phenomenal. It's great. But there's so many great places. Like Western Canada for skiing is pretty amazing. So I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't been.
Okay. Good.
But yeah, so I started. I went to school. My parents kind of do whatever you want in your first degree. So I took them up on it, and I did a film degree.
Cool.
And the first day of my film school was the morning of 9/11 in 2001. And I remember where I was when the first plane hit, and there was, chaos in Kingston and at my university at the time, just wondering what to do. And so I didn't really know anyone at school. So I just went to class, which was kind of at 11 o'clock. And I had a professor at the time who was leading this semester. And he said, we're going to scrap all of our curriculum for the next 4 months. And we are going to do a media study in how a tragic event like this unfolds and is covered in the media. And it was a really awful time in terms of the tragic nature of 9/11. I had a number of friends that went to New York to help and volunteer during that period. But it was a fascinating moment as a student to really see how news media worked, how coverage worked, how stories evolved, where they went, what was discussed. And so I started to think more in kind of early stages, how media works, how news works, et cetera. At the time, I was obsessed with Adbusters, a pretty famous Canadian magazine. It was very anti-advertising. It was probably like the antithesis of advertising. So a ton of fake ads, very, very negative in certain ways.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It was fun. I'd look it up for sure. It was a very famous pub in Canada at the time. But when I, over the course of my time at school, I started to get very involved in student government and some different aspects. And when I was graduating a couple of years later, I was talking to a mentor of mine about what to do next. I was thinking about writing the LSAT, the law school kind of entrance exam.
Yep.
And my girlfriend at the time and my wife now, we met at university. She was going to Toronto to do another degree. And so she said, why don't you come with me to Toronto, study over the summer, and then write the LSAT in the fall. The only problem with that plan was I had no money. And
Yep, that happens.
I needed a job and I needed something to do. So I talked to a mentor of mine and I was like, look, this is kind of what I'm feeling. And he said, have you ever thought about advertising? And the truth is I hadn't. I really didn't know anything about ad agencies. I'd watched ads, obviously, but I knew nothing about the process, anything like that. And he said, look, I know someone who knows someone at an agency in Toronto. Maybe you could do maybe you could interview there. And so I went to an agency. I'll never forget it to this day, because I'd interviewed at a couple of other places. I'd interviewed in CPG companies. I'd interviewed in investment banks, many different places, just to try to find something to tide me over. And I think I was debating whether I actually wanted to be a lawyer or not. And I walked into the agency on Queen Street in Toronto, and I've never forgotten how reception felt, how vibrant it was, how busy it was. I walked through the creative department and I saw amazing teams editing spots live, concepting, just doing what I thought looked really fun and interesting. And I'd never seen that world. And I had an interview with 2 people at the company at the time. And they make fun of me to this day because I was wearing a full suit and tie.
Nice.
So every time they see me, they're like, "You're so creative." Going back to
what was the role you were applying for?
I was applying for intern of account services. So applying to be an intern on one of the biggest telco accounts in Canada, an account called Rogers. Basically a very big brand here. And got a kind of 3-month contract off that interview and started.
So the suit worked.
Pardon me?
The suit worked.
The tie was killer. It was just great. Yes, it clearly worked. And I think, after a couple of months, I'd really fallen in love with the business. It just felt like an amazing blend of creativity, business, entrepreneurial, and I loved the people that I was getting to know and getting to work with. And so I called my parents about three months later, kind of the end of the summer. I hadn't really studied for the LSAT at all. I definitely wasn't in any kind of mindset to write it, let alone pass, and said, look, I think I'm going to go all in on this advertising.
How'd that go over with them?
You know what? To their credit, it was great. It had said, look, treat the next 3 years as kind of an MBA, see where it goes. And, if it doesn't go anywhere or you're not moving forward in the direction you want, then switch it up. But I think they realized that advertising from an early career is such a great foundation into so many different types of challenges, right? You work with brands who are going through definitely different cycles in their business. You meet a lot of different people, and it can give you, I think, a lot of options as you grow in your career as to where you want to go and what you want to do.
I like that perspective. It actually kind of relieves some of the stress from us that are, 1 to 3 years or looking to break into this career. Once you get in, it's a good starting spot. If after 3 years, you can go elsewhere if you need to, or figure things out from there because you have connections and it's just nice to know that, there's not so much pressure.
Yeah, listen, I think young people right now are under enough pressure, right? And I think that the young people I speak to, the people at FCB, the people who are entering into this industry and our agencies, quite frankly, I think if we can help them get a great experience, whether that's 1 year, 3 years, or 40 years, I think that's very special. And I think there's lots of talent that we have that have been in the company for a long, long time and have had amazing experiences, careers. There's other people who come in for 2 to 3 years, maybe go client side or go to a different part of the business and come back a couple of years later. And so,
of course,
I think
boomerang back.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We have a lot of boomerangs and we're proud of that.
What worries me, Tyler, is when you're telling your break-in story, you tell of walking into this agency and being mesmerized by the creative potential, people grouped together and concepting together in person.
Yep.
Now, I worry that juniors out there might miss out on this opportunity with the online, the hybrid. So what can we do? It's just a reality. Young people need to be, or entry-level talent, you don't have to be young. Anybody that's breaking into this industry for the first time, it helps to be around people creatively. So what's the solution? What should we do? What's your advice for those people that might be in a hybrid work setting? How do we figure this out so they do fall in love with this industry like you did?
Yeah, listen, my advice is show up. right? Is be present, is make an effort in your week to be with your teams, to be with leadership, to be on projects in those rooms. From an FCB perspective, the US as an example, we've gone back 3 days a week in our main offices, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with Monday, Friday optional.
Oh, that's nice.
And there was a big debate there, right? There was a debate in the middle of 2001. Should we be 100% remote? Should we be all back? What's the right cadence? Lots of different perspectives. We did lots of studies and surveys. But I think what I've found now after operating this way for over a year and a half is that I think our engagement and our teams are better. I think that our work is better. And I think for the people that you mentioned, just being seen, being around leadership, being around how decisions are made, that for me was very informative.
Yeah.
And I think it's not to say that Zoom and virtual doesn't work. I think there are massive benefits to the hybrid world for lots of different types of people, parents specifically, managing different schedules. But I think the thing about this industry that I don't think has changed at all is we always had a lot of flexibility. I think as a business, we were always very open to, if you had a commitment or you needed to be somewhere or you had to pick your kids up from school, there's no agency I've ever worked at who would say, well, no, you have to be in the office, stay in your desk, right? And so I think it's really important early on, if you want to really understand what we do and break in, dedicate time to be in the agency. I think about myself as I had no idea what a studio was. I had no idea what a creative platform was. I had no idea how to ship work, what proofreading was. And I had people on the line in the process were the ones that educated me and helped me. And I wasn't kind of clicking in and out. I was trying to ask the questions that I had on the side or pull someone and just say, what is a deck? I had no clue what a deck meant when I joined the business.
Sure.
And so I just think you have to put the effort in and the proactivity in to kind of make those connections and be seen.
You have to show up. People think I'm crazy. I show up 100% of the time I'm working. So 5 days a week, I'll go into the office, even on Mondays and even on Fridays. People ask me why. One, for me, it's like mental, like this, keep my home and work separate. It's not always separate. There's overlap in this industry, but when I'm here, I'm working. When I'm home. But then I also get to go into some new business pitches, or if somebody needs help in another conference room, I'll bounce in. I'm walking by. They might ask a question, or I'll ask them a question. I'm there. It's so helpful.
Yeah. And listen, I think what we do is very organic, right? And I think a lot of, specifically on the creative side of things, I think about creatives being together in a room with a strategist or at a dinner or at a lunch, kicking something around. It's a very organic process that you have to build on you have to build on those ideas together in a very small team. And I think over Zoom and in the virtual world, I think it's very, very difficult to do that. Now, as I said, certain other functions, if you're in the finance department or you're in HR as an example, or you're in specific kind of aspects of the business, virtual makes 100% sense, right? Sure. And so I don't think it's every department and every person. But I do think if you're in, let's say, creative strategy or the business and account side of things, I think it's really important to make an effort to really be with your teams, to connect, and frankly, to be with your clients. I think selling creative work, I think being there to show the passion you have for those concepts, it's a difference maker versus some of the virtual presentations that we've been a part of.
Yeah. And I know a lot of a team that shows up a lot is like our new business team, or anybody that's pulled on pitches. They're here all the time working. Yep. That's a team sport, really. That's a whole different ball game that you need to be in. And they do a great job when they're together traveling around.
It is. And because clients feel that, right? They feel they know, I think, in the first 5 to 10 minutes if a team is a real team.
Yeah. The chemistry.
It is an assembled team, right?
Right.
And I think the reality about great chemistry between teams is it's built. It's not instant. And, I think about a lot of the teams I've been a part of, you have to go through those reps like an athlete practices in situations and rehearsals and new business. And that just takes time and it takes commitment to each other.
Love it. So Tyler, I want to ask you about how you broke in. So we know how you broke in. How did you thrive in this industry? How did you went through the account track here from coordinator to supervisor to director to head of planning at Publicis. So I just want to know, like, how do you, for me especially, because I'm in this industry, I'm fairly new to this industry, like, and for our audience out here, I neglect this a lot. I always talk about breaking in. I always neglect the thrive in part. What have you noticed? What do you contribute to your success to level up in this industry, to stay in it, stay committed? Sometimes I feel like I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like when Friday hits at 4 p.m., I'm out. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And then I pray for the weekend sometimes.
Listen,
just how it is.
I wouldn't say in some weeks I'm no different, right? Some weeks it's like, okay, I need a break and I need to recharge and refill. I think that's true of any industry. And I think that's totally normal. I think from my perspective, early on, I worked on telco, which I really loved, right? It was a very fast paced, it's a competitive business. I was very into technology. So we launched, this is going to date me, but first iPhone products like that I personally loved. So I was really passionate about the business that I worked on, and I wanted to help our clients win and thrive. I think secondly, when I joined the agency, I was one of the only, if not the only person in the company that had a Facebook page when I started in advertising. It was still relatively, it was still closed to college students, and it had just started to open.
Oh, cool.
And one of the shifts that happened when I started in the business is most clients at that time were investing 3 to 4% of their total budgets in what they called digital, right? I think classic banners, display, right? That's where it went. Maybe a website if you were really progressive. And clients woke up to the amount of time that consumers were spending in social and these new places, but they turned to their agencies to really help educate them on what to do and how to do it. Problem with that was very few people in agencies had Facebook pages. So I was invited into a lot of meetings with senior agency leadership, with senior agency clients to help explain to them what the Facebook was, how to publish, what the benefits could be,
sure,
and how to start to create early strategies on how to use, at the time, what was a new medium. And so I really, I think, connected what I was passionate about personally, which was the web, which was publishing, which was having a perspective on work in different places, into helping clients connect with different types of consumers and people. And in 2007 and 8, or 07, I believe Publicis, the holding company, acquired a brand called Digitas. And as part of that acquisition, there was a mandate that any Publicis agency that had a digital division had to rebrand it Publicis Modem. And so I went from account service into this new digital division called Publicis Modem as a very young person, as part of a small team. Mm-hmm. And I started to work on all of our businesses as they started to shift more and more investment into the digital space. So that, was able quite dramatically over the years. And my shift into kind of from account supervisor, that world, into digital strategy was, we were doing a lot of interesting things, but when we started to evaluate, is what we're doing working as well as it should be, I put my hand up and said, hey, we should have more of a strategic lens early on when we're doing these engagements and projects to make sure that we're making the most effective work possible. And so I spent a lot of time in digital strategy, really helping clients to understand technology, social media, one-to-one. And then when my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was actually based in London, England. So we were doing long distance between Toronto and London for a number of years.
Oh, how'd that go?
You know what? It was really hard, but it was actually very great for both of us because she was studying to be a doctor. She's a family doctor here in Toronto. And I was all in on this crazy thing called advertising. And I loved what I did. She loved what she did. I'd travel over there every 8 weeks, or she'd come here, which was amazing as well.
And you both are busy.
Exactly. We're both
working a lot.
Yeah. We're both going. Her career is slightly more important than mine. I would say.
No way.
But yeah, so then I went over to London, really to be with her. But as part of that, of course, I still needed a job. So I moved with Publicis, became eventually the co-head of planning of Publicis Modem. And what I loved about that experience for me in London was just how global the community was and how global our team was. I think we had, 30 or so people as part of the planning group in the agency at the time. I think 28 of them were from countries that weren't the UK. And so I really got to see a great cross section of talent. But secondly, my partner at the time was a brand planner called Simon. And I didn't really know anything about brand planning. I had been on the digital side for most of my entire career. I was an account person prior to that. And what I found was when we came together with my kind of technology, social side brain and his amazing brand planning segmentation brain, we could really unlock a lot of different ways to solve a client's problem. And so over a 2 or 3 year period, we rotated our planners in the department. If you were a planner that had more brand planning experience like my partner, we would make you the lead of a search assignment with a client and have a search specialist support you. Or if you were, someone like myself and a client came in on us with a big, social media brief or a big brand brief, we would take our social media planner and ask them to lead a brand brief. And so at the end of 2 years, we had a really well-rounded group of people who understood all the different facets of what we do. And I think that kind of curiosity is really what has driven me from day one. So when I think about people early on, I think the best thing about agencies is they change, right? They change how they work. They challenge what the ideas are. They challenge their partners. And I think when you're just breaking into the business, you're fresh, right? You have an amazing perspective that I think has so much more value than people maybe underweight. A big moment for me in my career was our agency was pitching a value beer brand. So it was like $1 a beer, super popular nice. Colleges, universities.
Sounds like the good stuff.
It wasn't the best tasting, but it did the job at the time. And I was asked to come in on a Friday and a Saturday to kind of help really just support the pitch team. And support at that point meant getting lunch. It meant organizing meeting rooms. It meant doing whatever the team needed over that period.
Sure. Why not?
And I met a friend of mine the night before who was in the industry. And I said, hey, look, we're pitching this brand in a couple of months. I would love to just get your perspective on it. And he talked to me about the market share, the key competitors, kind of some insights into the brand. And I just wrote a 5-page deck and just on my perspective of what I'd heard and what we could do. And in one of the breaks in this meeting, I asked the president and the CCO, hey, I met someone in this industry. I think they've got a really interesting perspective. Could I share it with you? And I presented it to them. And then suddenly I had a voice in the room. I was invited to pitches to do more market research, to start talking about early stage perspectives. And that was really formative for me because I felt like my voice was heard. I felt like I had a perspective that was worth sharing. And when I think about people today, when I think about your listeners and people on this podcast, I think the same is true for you as it was for me, right? Replace the Facebook with TikTok or ChatGPT or any of the emerging platforms that we're seeing and go hard at those and start to understand how does creativity activate in those places? How can you help brands and agencies dive into them? And how can you accelerate from there?
I love it. You had me thinking there. I was thinking about at my place of work, they asked me, I'm working on 2 podcasts for our agency.
Cool.
They come to me and they go, hey, we want you to launch a podcast for us. We have these ideas. I'm like, yep, let's talk about it. I'm not TikTok there. I'm not great at TikTok, but you're absolutely right. For our listeners out there, find what those social platforms are, those emerging platforms, go all in on them, offer your perspective. If you're at a healthy creative agency, the leadership, like yourself, Tyler, I'm sure would love to hear perspectives of the younger talent. It's just stepping up and putting that. It's scary at first, but they want to hear from you. You want to hear from
yes, and I get that it's scary. I've been scared. I'm at times still scared, right, to share a perspective and to get out there and to do that. But I think it's so important and liberating when you do, because I think every great leader wants to hear it, as you say. And I think every great agency wants to feel that you're passionate about what we're doing, right? And that passion is really felt, I think, by sharing your perspective, by leading, and by connecting your passion to a wider purpose and a wider calling. And I think your example of podcasting is perfect, right? It's like you took the initiative to start something great, to create something. That's what we do every day. And as you start to build momentum in that space, you're going to have more people coming to you going, hey, I have an idea, or I have an adjacency, or I have something that I'm interested in. And again, that's not platform specific, right? We've got lots of people at FCB who are running Shopify stores, or who are creating Amazon pages, or who have side hustles and small businesses. Those are more relevant to agency life than ever.
Yeah.
And so I just think there's value in so many places. And I think for all your listeners, don't underestimate the fact that your managers and leaders want to hear what you think. And so my advice is share it.
I love it. So now, Tyler, I'm curious. It is the end of January here. We'll probably have this up in a couple weeks. Internship season is coming soon for these listeners. I'm sure they're going to be curious about it. How can they learn more about FCB internships or early careers? Where can they go? How can they talk with you? What do you recommend for all jobs?
For sure. We run some amazing internship programs across our offices. So you can start by checking out fcb.com and going to specific office pages from there. We've got amazing talent leads across the company that run those programs. So depending on what city you're in or where you're located, just find your local agency and connect through their site to the HR leadership. They can help educate you on the timing of the internship programs for the spring. And hopefully you can come on in and understand a little more about that process. But we have a great program in Chicago as an example. We've got great programs in other markets as well. But all of our contact information can be found on fcb.com.
Perfect. Amazing, Tyler. I appreciate you coming on. I have no further questions. You crushed it. I really do appreciate your perspective and your story, and all your advice is just fantastic. It's inspired me. So thank you again.
Oh, listen, Gino, thank you. I mean, I think as we talked about, keep doing what you're doing. I think the more great creators we have out there who are helping new talent and new people understand our business, the better. So I appreciate the time, appreciate what you're doing, and I hope to meet you in person in Chicago soon.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do it without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest.